Hey, what's up? This is FantasyFling with DFS Army, and this is your Battle Royale first look draft. So we're going to hop into a Battle Royale draft here in a second, but basically want to kind of do an overview of the entire slate. Look at some of the game tiles, courtesy of DFS Army Domination Station. See game environments we may want to target, teams that we may want to target, that really stand out, like Baltimore here going against Cleveland with a 28.5 implied team total. So really want to get an idea of, what are the game environments we might want to target? Who are teams, maybe potential team stacks, maybe players as one-offs that we want to look at in these drafts, and then kind of get an idea of ADP. We'll go over Underdog. I've actually done a couple of these just so I can get an idea of where ADP is at, so I can show you, what the field is kind of doing in these early drafts. And I like attacking this early in the week because I think that's one of the strategies of Battle Royale is getting into it early week before a lot of the content comes out, before people have had a chance to consume a lot of the content. They know who the best plays are. And I think you can get some of these guys at value right now, hammer a few of these drafts, and it really gives you a good chance to leverage the field early on. So we're going to look at ADP in a second. And we're going to start with the game tiles. Now, I think general strategy for the Battle Royale and really just DFS, whether you're doing DraftKings or FanDuel week 2, there's so much overreaction that goes on in week 1. It's one sample size. It's one data point, but yet people seem to think they watch one game and they know definitively what teams are going to be for that year. Just based off of one game. So one of the things that I think is, kind of the biggest leverage that we have in DFS for week 2 is just fading that recency bias that we saw in week 1, that overreaction. Now, did we see something that was, something that was trending last year into this year? Like, does it confirm our priors after looking at, an entire year and the offseason of data and, just seeing these teams? What did they do in free agency? What did they do in the draft? How did they look last year? Or are the Miami Dolphins just completely broken, for example? I think there's a good possibility that that's the case. So maybe that's something that, we want to avoid going into week 2. We want to avoid Miami Dolphins. Did a team like the Broncos, they just come out pretty poor offensively, like a lot of teams across the league. Cincinnati didn't score a ton of points, like 17 points against the Browns last week. We know they typically start slow. Is that going to be what we see in week 2? Or is it just kind of an overreaction? For example, Detroit, they were pretty poor, but they were also going against a Green Bay team that's really good. So now they have a 26.75 implied team total. The average person may say, you know what? Ben Johnson's gone. They're going to be terrible. They may fade them. Vegas is telling you that you probably shouldn't fade them. So I think we want to kind of look for overreaction spots, both good and bad. Like, I'm probably not going to be on the Jets this week, outside of maybe just running Justin Fields naked in some lineups because they scored, 30 plus points last week. That would be kind of the other side of that. They looked really good last week. We think they're going to look really good this week. That's what recency bias will tell you. Chances are they're not. So I think you just kind of want to look at the bigger picture. What did you think these teams were going to be going into this season? And did week 1 confirm that? Confirmation bias can, of course, be bad too. But, like the Ravens and Bills, we know these teams are going to be good because we've watched them the past several years. And week 1 proved that, and it's business as usual for these teams. But for some of these other teams, week 1 may have just been an outlier performance, whether it was good or bad. So we have to take that into consideration. What is the field doing, and can we possibly leverage that? Where is the field potentially getting it wrong? So that said, I think the Vegas lines are really shaky week 1 because week 1 there's just so much that goes into it. Teams are playing sloppy. They only had, 3 preseason games. There's less padded practices. The defensive coordinators have had a lot of time to game plan. So defenses really they kind of dominate week one. And then as the season goes on, we see the offenses adjust. They get into more of a rhythm and they figure things out. That said, let's look at some of the game environments that we potentially may want to target. And then we'll kind of look at the ADPs. We'll do player by player breakdown as far as DFS Army's projections. What are the projections of DFS Army telling us? And the prop market, we're going to look into that too. And then we're going to do a live battle royale draft and kind of just bring it all together for this first look draft. So a couple, spots that really stand out. The highest team total on the slate is going to be Baltimore, 28.5. They put up 40 points last week. And, I basically went to bed. I was falling asleep on the couch. It was 40-25. I thought for sure, fourth quarter, like they're going to win this game. I wake up, it's 41-40 Bills. They get the win. Had to watch the game over. Couldn't believe it. It was what an awesome game week one. Maybe the game of the year happened week one. But they're pissed. They're 0-1. They need to win this game. They're going against Cleveland at home. They got a 28.5 implied team total. So they're going to score points. The question is it going to go to Lamar? Is it going to go through Lamar? Is it going to go through Derrick Henry? We saw times last year where it went through both of them. They were both optimal having them in the winning lineup. So this is an explosion spot, I think, for Baltimore. Certainly, they had a couple games last year against Cleveland, and they combined for over 30 points, right around 30 points during those two games. So I love this spot for them. I don't think you need to bring back, I really just like the Baltimore side. Getting Lamar, getting Derrick Henry, whether you're stacking Lamar with, Zay Flowers or Mark Andrews, or you can really run him naked if he's going to run in some touchdowns. That is certainly viable too. We've seen the running quarterbacks do it several times. So like this spot. And, that has a 45.5 point total, but this is a huge spread. This is an 11-point spread. Really what this tells me is more times than not, you should just be looking to play Derrick Henry. Whenever you have a huge spread like this, I think Derrick Henry is going to be the play, but I will certainly play the Lamar side of it as well in this game. Now, as far as games that really stand out, we do have one above them all, 49.5. Cincinnati going against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this is kind of interesting. So there's a couple narratives here going on with these two teams. First off, Cincinnati, they start slow. They got the win last week, but they were going against Cleveland. So we kind of expected that. And that game definitely dudded. There wasn't a lot of scoring. And, that happens a lot of times. These divisional games, that's one of the things that I think we kind of want to avoid. Whenever you see chalk divisional games and you think they're going to be back and forth, oftentimes they end up being low-scoring games. We've seen it time and time again. Tampa and Atlanta last week. I know just from doing this several years at DFS Army that, we study these games and we think, this game has a high potential, but these teams know each other so well. So these divisional games, oftentimes, they can end up hitting the under. That's what we saw last week with Cincinnati and Cleveland. But I think in this spot, this does make more sense. Jacksonville, that's definitely a defense you can score on. They're certainly not the best defense. They had a week to shake the rust off. They have a 26.5 implied team total. Chase burned you last week. Of course, Jacksonville, they do not have the corners. They do not have a Denzel Ward. So I think this is maybe a bounce back spot for Jamar Chase. I like Chase Brown again this week. I certainly would attack it again with T. Higgins. I think Bengals stacks are stacks that you need to play all year. They're going to burn you for sure like they did last week. But I think as we saw last year, there's going to be several times throughout the year where these stacks were what you needed. Now, Joe Burrow +2 is definitely viable. We saw one time in the Battle Royale last year. It got there, but I also think you could just do +1. +2 would include Chase Brown, but if you just want to, if you can just get Jamar Chase, or if you want that leverage off of Chase who's going in the first round, you can go back to T. Higgins. So you got to be willing to go back to it. On the other side of that, Jacksonville, I don't really know what to think. They have BTJ, they have Travis Hunter, And my concern with BTJ going in best ball drafts all summer was he's going at the 1-2 turn. And when has Trevor Lawrence ever proved that he can support 2 wide receivers? He's barely supported 1. So we saw Travis Hunter play the majority of the offensive snaps. And, he got a lot of targets. I think he got 8 targets. I think, BTJ got like 7. BTJ would have had like a donut, essentially, had he not got a rushing touchdown. So it was a bad week for BTJ, but I'm willing to go back to it here. And, that said, I don't think that you necessarily need to play Trevor Lawrence stacks. I think maybe Trevor Lawrence just isn't good at football. That's kind of what we've seen. He just has not lived up to expectations. He's got all the weapons and still couldn't do it last week against a poor Carolina team. For me, I'm probably not playing Trevor Lawrence stacks unless I miss out on my quarterback. I'm fine getting BTJ in this spot here, going back to him, stud, coming off a dud. I'm fine going to Travis Hunter. Maybe I would play this, maybe a bring back would probably be the way that I play this, and I'd be much more inclined to play the Cincinnati side here. So a couple more games. We have 47-point total. Philly going on the road to Kansas City. Kansas City lost last week to the Chargers, who look good. This was a very good game, very competitive game. Kansas City was trailing most of it, but they made a game of it. And, you thought maybe Mahomes was going to do what Mahomes does, come back and win it. Well, he didn't. But this is certainly a spot. I personally like the Philly side a little more in this game, just because Mahomes he's down pass catchers. I don't think Worthy is going to play. Obviously, Rashee Rice is suspended. So for me, if you're playing the Kansas City side, I'm definitely stacking with Hollywood Brown. I think you can get him in the last round of your draft, or second to last round. You can get him really late. I expect him to get a ton of volume. But also, don't forget about Kelsey. And I really like the Philly side. I think they could potentially put it on Kansas City again. Kansas City, at full strength, they're better than they were last year, but they are far from full strength right now. But I do like this spot here. So a couple other that really stand out. Obviously, we talked about Baltimore. We talked about this one. We talked about Philly and KC. I think this is a good bounce back spot for Detroit. And I think this game has potential to be back and forth. Caleb is a little bit of a mixed bag, but we saw a good amount from him. He was more mobile. He's a little more decisive, still erratic sometimes with some throws, still missing some throws, but he's going to be a high variance quarterback, and he's got all the pass catching weapons that this game I think has shootout potential. Detroit, I think we're going back to Gibbs. We're going, back to Amon-Ra. Like, I like this implied team total. I think this is a much easier matchup for them going against Chicago's defense. So I like this game, and I definitely would be open to having stacks of this game or just pieces of it. Now, the last spot for me, as far as like games that I want to target or teams that I want to target, I think Buffalo, this is a divisional game and it can be tough. And I know Josh Allen hasn't always had the best performances against divisional foes, but 26.25 implied team total. And I think Keon Coleman's good and Khalil Shakir's healthy. So I like Josh Allen. I'm stacking him with one of Kincaid. I'm stacking him with one of Coleman. I'm stacking him with one of Shakir, one of those three. And, I'm probably not forcing a game stack. I'm just open to getting Josh Allen exposure each and every week. And especially, if he falls in your lap, the stack falls in your lap going against the Jets. I don't think the Jets are going to be good. I think last week, you let Aaron Rodgers put 30 plus on you. I think, definitely the Bills can do that as well. And, I think you could play Fields naked. I think you could stack him with Garrett Wilson. But typically my process is I'm going to avoid, stacking on teams with like a total this low. That's just not really, my type of process for something like that. So last, I want to look at a couple spots where Like, let's just kind of look at ADP. Let's get an idea of what the field thinks. Then we're going to look at DFS Army projections, see, where maybe early on in the week the field is getting it wrong, and then we can attack these Battle Royale drafts. And by the way, guys, I do a cheat sheet for DFS Army subscribers, just kind of breaking this down and every week. And, I'm going to look at ADP. I'm going to look at our projections, see like potential leverage spots where I think the field is getting it wrong and where we can attack. And, if you like these breakdowns, you like this first look draft, let me know. Hit that like button, comment, let me know, how you did in Battle Royales last week, if you played at all. And it was a huge week for DFS Army VIPs. We actually, specifically on DraftKings and FanDuel, we had a guy win the millie. So he said, longtime DFS Army subscriber, Geep, thank you so much for the videos and all the advice over the years. Finally hit it. Jeez, he absolutely crushed it. And it was crazy because 2 DFS Army subscribers were battling out in the top 20. Like, their lineups litter the top 20. One guy won 80K. Obviously, a contest that top heavy, you really want to win it. Rotom Wash won the millie, had 2 lineups in the top 5, and then obviously won it all. So just absolutely crushed with over $1 million. Because of this millie maker win, we are extending our 20% off, and we're changing it to any subscription. So if you want to get an NFL only subscription, you get 20% off as long as you're a member for life. Use promo code Millie. I will put the link in the video description for you to sign up for this 20% off. But this is the last week you can get it. So really good deal being extended because of the millie win. And being a DFS Army VIP, you get access to the Domination Station, which works for FanDuel, and that's why I'm using it for Underdog, is this half PPR projections. These are obviously very important. Or if you play on DraftKings, we have full PPR for that. And obviously, you can use the Domination Station, which, Rotom Wash used to build those 150 lineups to win the millie. We have an incredible optimizer called the Domination Station that's rated as one of the best in the industry by Daily Overlay. So you get access to that. You get access to the coaching, the cheat sheets, all that, the calls, which Geek had so many in the cheat sheets for the winning millie maker builds. One of them was Justin Fields naked. So yeah, you get access to all that. So definitely take advantage of that while you still can. But before we get into the projections, I want to look at the ADP. Right now, we actually have Lamar Jackson. Well, Lamar Jackson is going first off the board at quarterback in drafts. And, not really surprising because it's Lamar Jackson and they have that high implied team total. But I really like to do first is I like to look at running back and wide receiver rankings, because looking at past Battle Royale winners, this is really where you want to attack the draft, is in you want to attack running back and wide receiver really in this first couple rounds. Obviously, you can go contrarian and get quarterback, tight end, but it doesn't really work very often, specifically with your first pick. You really want to have that upside of, getting like a Henry or a Christian McCaffrey or Barkley or a Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Puka with your first pick, because 95% of the time last year, running back and wide receiver were taken with the first pick. So I like to see what the field is doing. And this makes sense. Derrick Henry has really been going first overall. And with that high implied team total that we just looked at, this huge spread, this is really what you want to target, is running backs like a Derrick Henry with high implied team totals and big spreads. So Christian McCaffrey, we're not scared right anymore. He played last week. He saw a ton of opportunities. They're even more banged up. He does so much through the air that I think he's back in play. So he really hasn't been going second. It's been Chase. And then it's really been Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. And here is where I do think we can potentially find some leverage in this draft. I've been clicking Saquon Barkley with every pick so far. Now, if I go first, I'll certainly pick Derrick Henry. Haven't gone first, But when we go down here and we look at the projection, prop projection, Saquon Barkley has the highest projection on the slate. Now, what the prop projections are, and this is something you have as DFS Army VIP, is this is going to kind of aggregate all the best sports books and give you the prop projection. So it is the most efficient projection you could have because people are betting on this, and actually sharp bettors are actually moving the lines for sports books. So I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep saying Christian McCaffrey. Saquon Barkley has far and away the highest projection through the props right now. And we actually haven't even put in our own projections yet. What we typically do on Tuesday is this is just going to be where we get it from our provider. Then we go in there and we'll change it. Right now, we're just going with the prop projection. But that's one of the great things about this is you could choose our projections or the prop projections. And right now, again, Saquon Barkley has the highest projection. So when we see him potentially, we see him going 5th overall. And he's got a higher projection than both Jamar Chase and, Derrick Henry. So and who else was going here? Now that I think about it, and Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. So he's going after these three guys and he has a higher projection than them. That's kind of, some value I want to pick up right away before the field starts to react to that. And we start to see Saquon Barkley going higher in the drafts. So that's one of the advantages we have of doing this first look. But yeah, let's kind of just go through our projections here real quick. Obviously, we have Saquon and then Henry, then Jahmyr Gibbs. So, if we look at this, Gibbs is probably a bit undervalued right now. Yeah, I mean, not crazy undervalued, but we have Gibbs above Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's going there. So if you start running back, I think you can go Saquon, you can go Jahmyr Gibbs with that pick. And that's really something we want to look for right away, is some potential spots where the field is getting it wrong. We go over to wide receiver, and I don't think there's a whole lot here that we differ from the market as of right now. I will say, one of the things is Brian Thomas Jr. We have Brian Thomas Jr. with the wide receiver 2 projection right now, and just, close margin. But again, it's the props, which is going to be the best projection system. 14.7, he's going wide receiver 2. Or we have him as wide receiver 2, and he is actually going wide receiver 4. So that's another good spot that we can certainly target. And then another one for me that really stood out, a couple here. Jalen Hurts. We have Hurts with the best projection on the slate over Lamar, over Josh Allen, and Hurts is going 3rd right now in drafts. So I like being able to start this with either getting Saquon or getting Hurts and maybe pair them together. Maybe Philly is the team you need this year or this week. And if you can't, also we can get Patrick Mahomes. He's going in the last round. I think if that game's going off and we see, especially if we see Mahomes running more like he did last week, because he doesn't have a lot of open wide receivers, but also we can stack him with Hollywood Brown, who should get a ton of volume and is also, a deep threat. So he has that ceiling. I think that maybe that's a late stack that we want to look to attack. So let's go ahead and get into it. I know that was a kind of a long preview, but, wanted to break it down a little bit, kind of give some of my thoughts on the slate, my early thoughts. And, as I start writing my cheat sheet for DFS Army VIPs, that'll be dropping tomorrow, I like, just kind of talking through it and getting a little bit of a head start there. So this is filling pretty quick. 2 people left. And by the way, guys, the Battle Royale, if you don't know, this is a 6-person draft. Takes about 5 minutes to complete. It's $7 entry fee. We got 40K to first this week. You're going against 5 others. So really fun contest. I was a little disappointed that they dropped it from 50 to 40K because they dropped the contest from 56K to 48. But, I really think that's just because it was week 1. They didn't think there would be, is a much excitement, of course, this, week 2. So I'm guessing, based on looking at the numbers the past couple of years, they don't think it's going to feel like it did week 1. So let's hop into this draft. Let's see where we're picking, and then we can kind of devise our plan of how to attack it. The good news is as soon as we hop in here, this is already filled. Like I said, this is pretty quick. Takes about 5 minutes to complete. So we're picking first. I've been getting Saquon Barkley in every draft. So I think the way that I will likely change this here is I will probably go Derrick Henry and then come around and try to get a Jalen Hurts stack. Mix it up because I've been getting a good amount of Saquon Barkley. I've only done a couple of these, obviously, but I think Saquon is going to be the guy that, we'll be able to continue to do drafts the next couple days and get Saquon. Really, if you're picking anywhere, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, even 5th, you can get Saquon. So not really able to get Derrick Henry so far in any of these unless you're picking first. So I'll take that high implied team total. I'll take that big spread. I'll assume Derrick Henry is the guy that you need, and then I'll be looking to stack up some other spots to game stack it. Let's go with Henry here. And let's see how this falls. Now, Jalen Hurts has been going 16. So we can queue him up. And I'm okay to reach on him. That's one of the things that I saw, looking at past Battle Royale winners is like, it's okay to reach on your quarterback, your stack, to get the stack that you need. It's actually plus EV. You do get these rare combinations. And, I don't expect him to go before 12 or 13, so I'll take him there, but I know he will not make it back to me at 24. And again, he has the top projection on the slate. So this guy, PewFan 25, went ahead and took Saquon, which is a good pick, and then Lamar. So he's kind of playing it the opposite that I am. He's in Red Badge Bro, by the way, but he's basically saying, so yeah, I think Saquon's undervalued. I'm going to take him, and I'm going to take Lamar Jackson, hoping that the studies go through Lamar, not Derrick Henry. I'm doing the opposite because I've got a decent amount of Barkley, and I'm expecting Jalen Hurts to make it back to me, so I can go ahead and take Hurts. If he doesn't make it back to me, I can kind of start thinking about who I might want. I had identified, so he did make it back to me. I got a choice of Chase Brown or Brian Thomas Jr. Oh, so Hurts. Yeah, Hurts did not make it back to me. That is tilting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take Chase Brown. I'm going to take Brian Thomas Jr. And we're going to think about what we want for our next stack. Joe Burrow just went. What I could do, like I talked about before, is because let's see if A.J. Brown makes it back. I wouldn't be opposed to getting A.J. Brown, getting Mahomes, and then maybe stacking him with Kelsey. Still getting a piece of that game. Maybe Saquon Barkley fails. Mahomes is the stack you need. And then I can have a bring back with A.J. Brown if that game does really go off. Let's see where Kelsey's going. 25. I mean, maybe they can make it back. There goes A.J. Brown. So, yeah, that's not happening. He went ahead and stacked up A.J. Brown and Barkley. So we got to start thinking we could take Kelsey. We could definitely get Mahomes. And no one's going to be on Devonta. Probably nail Devonta in the last round. Okay. So I think here I will take Kelsey. I'll take Mahomes. And then I'll have a Devonta bring back. And I like that I'm going a little off the board here because I went chalk with Derrick Henry, with Chase Brown, with Brian Thomas, and Travis Kelce. I took him right at ADP, but I took Mahomes ahead of ADP because I want to be able to reach on the stack. If that's how I see the slate playing out, is Mahomes is the guy you need. They really need this game. They're pissed off at the Super Bowl, yada, yada, yada. Or instead of Devonta, I can also do Hollywood Brown. I do think it's more likely, though, that Hollywood will be the focal point of defense, the Eagles' defense, and they'll be trying to shut Hollywood down as the number one wide receiver in that game with no Rashee Rice, no Xavier Worthy, and there's a good chance that a lot will get funneled to Kelsey. So, and hopefully that game does go off, and it's Devonta Smith who catches a good amount of balls and like a deep touchdown, and could certainly be the bring back that you need. If not, I'm open to just Mahomes, just a Mahomes stack at home. Maybe Philly puts up a dud. So, where are some other spots we can do like a T. Higgins? T. Higgins and Chase Brown stack? Tough decision. I'm actually getting T. Higgins way past ADP. So I think as opposed to the full-on game stack, I'm just going to take T. Higgins 10 spots past ADP. I certainly think that makes this lineup unique. I think there's a good enough leverage there. If, T. Higgins has a good game, Burrow stacks likely fail. T. Higgins has, 80 yards and a touchdown. Chase Brown has a couple touchdowns. Jamar Chase fails. Potentially, Burrow doubles fail in that scenario, or Burrow to Chase stacks fail. And I certainly like that value. So I think that's a pretty good first look draft. I liked how, I thought Jalen Hurts would get back to me. He did not get back to me. Even though I was willing to take him early, he went 5 spots above ADP. And, I had to kind of just audible on the fly here. And, that's how it kind of works in these drafts. And overall, I think we built a correlated lineup here. We got Mahomes to Kelsey stack. We got Brian Thomas Jr. I think is undervalued. We're able to get him. We got, Derrick Henry, obviously in a very good spot. And then we got correlation with Chase Brown and T. Higgins there in that Jacksonville game. And actually, I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but we game stacked it up. So we got Chase Brown, we got T. Higgins, and we got Brian Thomas Jr. So if that is one of the games that you need, we certainly have set ourselves up for that quite well. So that's going to wrap it up for this one. And again, if you like this kind of content, let me know. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. If you just stumbled upon DFS Army's channel, we got so much more content coming your way. We got the Showdown Breakdown starting tomorrow for DraftKings and FanDuel for the Thursday night game. We got Tournament Tactics on Friday. So a lot more content coming your way. So make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification button, because you're not going to want to miss when we go live and drop $1 million winning takes like they did last week on Tournament Tactics. So we'll see y'all in the next time.